Holding ground in some areas, moving forward in others. That's how President Volodymyr Zelensky described Ukraine's counteroffensive as it continues to unfold. But Russia is putting up a fierce fight. Air raid sirens rang out throughout Kyiv overnight for more than 3 hours. Ukraine says the capital came under intense Russian aerial bombardment, but claims most of the drones were indeed shot down. Other areas, including those far away from the front lines, were also targeted, including the western Lviv region, as well as Zaporizhzhia. CNN's Fred Blightgen joins us live now. So Fred, just walk us through what more you know about these airstrikes overnight in both Kyiv and Lviv, especially as Russians continue to focus on military and infrastructure targets.
Hi there, Zain. Well, that's I think a key point with the Russians trying to focus on those military and infrastructure installations, especially if you look at those strikes that took place in the western part of Ukraine, in the Lviv area, where of course a lot of that infrastructure there is key, critical infrastructure for the Ukrainians. But then you have the situation here in the capital of Kyiv, which of course very often has these air raid alerts pretty much every night that they go off. And last night they were indeed very long, going off for several hours. And the Ukrainians are saying that they detected 35 drones coming towards the area of the Ukrainian capital, and that they were able to take down 32 of those. So that obviously seems to very much indicate that the air defenses here in the Ukrainian capital are very strong, but the Russians certainly trying to bring those drones here into the city and hit targets in the city, what the Russians would call command and control structures of the Ukrainian military, but of course of the Ukrainian state as well. And then of course this is also for the population something that can also be very traumatic. Nevertheless, the Ukrainians are very confident they continue to take these drones down and protect the capital and protect other areas as well. Nevertheless, all this does of course tie in with Ukraine's counteroffensive. One of the things that we have seen is a lot of these aerial attacks have been even more increasing since the Ukrainians have been pushing the Russians on several areas in the front. And one of the places that you mentioned, Zaporizhzhia, is of course fairly close to the front line. I would say about 40 to 45 kilometers away from the actual front line areas. And that was targeted by a barrage of missiles overnight. The Ukrainians on those front lines are indeed saying that they are the ones who have the initiative. The president of this country, Volodymyr Zelensky, did indeed say that the Ukrainians were not losing territory anywhere, but gaining territory in a lot of places. And that's certainly the main focal point where that is happening, is the south of the country, where the going is pretty tough for the Ukrainians there. It's something that they have acknowledged. They say the battles are very tough. Russian air power is very strong, and the defenses are very strong as well. There's a lot of minefields, a lot of barriers, and of course also a lot of troops that are down there from the Russians. Nevertheless, when we were down in that region, it certainly seemed to us that the morale of the Ukrainian troops who were fighting down there was very hard. They acknowledged it's extremely difficult. It's very difficult for them to move forward, especially when they're being targeted by Russian air power. But they did believe that in the end they were going to be able to make this counteroffensive a success. So that's certainly, listening to the Ukrainian soldiers who are down there on the ground right now, they certainly seem to believe that this is something that they can see through, but at the same time it is extremely difficult. And the Ukrainians also say they are under no illusions that this is going to be something that can happen quickly. In fact, they say this counteroffensive is going to take a very long time, Zain.
All right, Fred Blightgen, live for us. Thank you.
Ukraine says Russia's major battlefield focus right now is in the east, with dozens of combat engagements on Monday alone.
Ukrainian military officials say Russia is throwing everything at them. Infantry units, air units, assault units made up of Russian convicts. But despite the pressure, Ukraine's president is painting a hopeful picture.
In some sectors, our forces are moving forward. In others, they are defending positions or resisting assaults and intensified attacks from the occupiers. We have no lost positions, only liberated ones. They only have losses.
Well, further south, battles are very hard going. One Ukraine fighter says Russians are digging in and are unleashing massive firepower from all directions. They've also set up dense minefields along those front lines you see there. Let's talk about all of this with Salma Abdelaziz and Nick Robertson. Nick, let's start with you, because Blinken's trip to Europe, we've just had the big NATO summit, didn't we, of the defence ministers. Is there going to be development of that, do you think?
Well, there's a Ukraine recovery conference taking place in London, begins later today, and tomorrow is the main day. And I think that will be the big focus for Secretary of State Antony Blinken and James Cleverly, who is British Foreign Secretary, is meeting with today. It's World Refugee Day today, so they'll meet and mark that. They'll have a press conference early in the day. But after that, the day takes a little bit more of a Ukraine turn. Secretary Blinken meets with the Ukrainian foreign minister. Then he gets a royal reception with King Charles. But tomorrow is about trying to energize the business community, not just governments, because we know governments have been giving billions and billions of dollars of military support, humanitarian support, and essentially paying the Ukrainian government's bills. But looking ahead, there's going to be a need to rebuild, recover Ukraine. And the estimate is that cannot be left to governments alone. That needs business and civil society input. So that's what tomorrow's conference will be about. And just a sort of a headline number of how much money is going to be required to do this. Last year, after just a few months of war, the Ukrainians estimated the total bill for recovery was going to be $100 billion. So you can imagine what it's going to be like now.
Yeah, extraordinary numbers.
And they need to keep that support. I don't know if either of you have seen them, but when I was driving into London the other day, I saw large Ukrainian flag sort of advertisements, I suppose, from the Ukrainian government saying, thank you, Britain, for your support.
And it's widely felt in Ukraine. I mean, I was in Ukraine a month ago, and you go, and when you're on the front line, whether it's a frontline soldier or the commanders, the colonels and such like you meet behind the lines, they all say thank you to the UK. They recognise, and I think this is part of Secretary Blinken's mission here as well, is to continue to strengthen the partnership and the big role that the UK is playing, and to support Ukraine. And you see Ukrainian flags in the oddest of places around the UK, on small farms, at gas stations. And I think that is witness to the political support that has been engendered by the leaders of Ukraine's allies, the UK, France, Germany, you know, the Baltics, the United States. But that is at stake also, that domestic political support. UK goes into an election next year. So does the United States. These leaders' policies on Ukraine need to be seen to be effective. They're talking about a long fight. This is, you know, going to be a difficult message if Ukraine doesn't take territory, big territory, on the battlefield. So I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot at stake politically here as well.
And on that note, Salma's joining us from London to discuss that. So Salma, in order to retain that support and garner more momentum in this counteroffensive, Ukraine needs tangible successes and gains, which it can demonstrate to the international community, which supports it. What is the latest?
Absolutely. Billions of dollars have been poured in by NATO. There is an expectation that that will be reciprocated with a major breakthrough on the ground. We're several weeks into this offensive, and yes, we've seen very modest gains. Ukraine claiming that it's been able to retake territory, particularly south of Zaporizhia, that it's been able to push into the front lines of Bakhmut. But again, no major breakthrough. We know from Ukrainian officials that for Russian forces, the focus remains on the eastern front line, so that's the Bakhmut region. But Ukrainian officials also say that Moscow's forces are reallocating towards the south, towards that Zaporizhia access, where Ukraine seems to be extremely focused on an attempt to punch through Russian defenses and potentially sever or disrupt that land bridge that connects Crimea to the rest of those Russian-occupied territories. But they are absolutely facing stiff resistance from Moscow's forces. There are landmines laid. There are anti-tank equipment in the ground. There are more soldiers arriving, according to Ukrainian officials. This is going to be a major challenge, of course.
Salma Abdelaziz and Nick Robertson, thank you both so much.